The Japanese sword set is a very simple sword set with the basic applications as used in the typical Japanese system. A few things to note when we talk about the classical Japanese sword. It is always worn on the left side always being the place of honor. When they sit in court, the guest of honor always sits on the left side, where in Western society it's exactly the opposite. From here, the gun was always drawn with the right hand. It was always the right-hand man. The guest of honor was always seated to the right. What we will do on the Japanese sword set, we will take each of the individual sections. And typical of a kata, it isn't a continuous series of opponents. It's simply a kata setup to show you the application of the sword with an opponent in the different directions. The first classic movement from here will be taken from a seated position with the sword drawn. You'll notice that when the block is made, the sword is drawn out and the block is made with the flat of the sword, deflecting the movement, and then the two classic cuts will be taken from this position. Section number 1 of the Japanese sword set. The kata starts from a classic seated position from here, where the opponent directly in front of you comes in with a classic overhead striking motion. Notice that the first movement from here is you retreat. As you retreat, the sword is drawn and the block is made with the flat from here. The first of your classic cutting movements here with two hands after the block is made, the cut comes directly across, and the second movement from here, the classic cut comes back. Notice as a general rule, the cuts are not made towards the head, they are generally made towards the body. Once again on the application, the block is made against the overhead cut. The first cut through. Notice the complete pivot of the body for power. The transfer now to the right power hand as a cut is made back. In the second section now, you have a classical situation where the opponent will be behind you. This is classically also done in a lot of the samurai movies, or an actual application from here, when the opponent is generally concealed behind such a thing as a soji screen. Once again, I will take the first section and then make the continuation into the second. So your motion from here, first, the cut and the cut. From here, do not have an opponent behind. Notice how the movement, the sword cuts back, the transfer out to a 45-degree angle from here, and the cut is made down. We will take this at a different angle so you can see the application from here. The opponent approaches directly from behind, the cut is made directly back from here. Stepping out, the cut is made now down. Notice catching the arms from here on the neck. The application of the third section will be taken first without the opponent in position so you can see the actual movement from here. What's really involved in this is just the classic turning from one position to another. Taken from the second section from here, which was the cut back, pivot, and the strike over. The classic movement here, turning away from the opponent without the opponent stepping in on this particular one, the pivot, the turn, and the cut back. This time taken with an opponent from exactly the same position. As I move away, the opponent will step in to show you the relationship of the opponent. Position 1 and the cut. From here, you have the opponent advancing. From here, from your backside, the classic turn, the pivot, and the cut is made. The fourth section has two distinct applications. So from here I'll take it first without a partner to show you the actual movements, then have the partner move in to show you what's actually happening. Once again, putting the previous sections together, the cut back, the cut over, the pivot. At this point, I want to concentrate strictly upon the feet. At this particular point, you do a hopping movement, which is in classical. In many of your weapon systems from here, where you pick up one foot and then the other to keep them from being cut. In this particular case, we're going to do a reversal of the foot. 1, 2. From here is reverse both feet. The first application then is simply a hopping movement to clear any type of weapon, in this particular case a sword. The second application will involve, first of all, the hop, and then the actual blocking with the weapon, in this particular case, the sword going all the way to the ground. What I will do, I will move into position from this. On the first one, I'll have Greg move in with the sword that we use strictly on a cutting movement. As you hop over, then we'll take the second application from here, which will be the block. From there, we will continue into the fifth application, because right from there, off the block, the sword will be drawn up from here, first with the one hand, the second hand, then the cutting motion will be made from the blocking position. Once again, I will move into position. From here, we'll take the first aspect of it with simply the hops without the use of the sword as a blocking weapon. 1, 2, the cut is around from here. Just taking the sword out completely from here. The first thing I want to do is the cut is made, I want to get this foot back. So we do, I'm going to withdraw both these. So as the cut is made, moving back away from the opponent. To ensure now that we have been able to evade this, we do a double movement from here as you come around. One, as the cut is made. The hop is made as the cut is made low, and the block is made down. Notice in this particular case, from here then, I bring both hands up from here under the weapon. The cut is then made with both hands. I will repeat this section without the opponent now that you have seen the actual applications. You're moving from here. 1, 2, 3. The hop, reversal from here. As you come in, notice the clearing movement from up over, and the cut is made down. The sixth section now is simply a continuation of the previous movement from here. I will have Greg stay in position. After we've done the hop, the clearing movement made, and a motion over. The next application of this is if the opponent retreats, and we're not able to complete this cut, we simply use then one of the classic movements is used in the Japanese sword. Once again, I will repeat this entire section from the hop. Once again, 1, 2. In this particular case, as I brought the sword up from here, the opponent retreats. As the opponent retreats, I simply use the circular movement, the cross step, stepping in with a cutting motion. The next section of the kata simply involves some classic footwork that is used in many of the classic sword systems in the Japanese, for instance, the positioning of the feet. In the kata, I'm showing only one side of this. I will add one other extra section from here so you can see simply the adjustment of the feet. From the position, it's a matter of either advancing or retreating. I'll take 3 on this for this particular position. Notice now the movement of the feet. The toes come back 1, the heels 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Once position has been made, then you advance in. Let me add one other application from this in the section that was not in the kata, but could just as easily have been put in there, where this will be continued and the cut will be made from the back side. Retreating with the feet. 1, 2, 3. The advancement in. From here, we're going to do exactly the same movement. 1, 2, 3. Notice this time as I step in, the cut is taken from the back side of the body. Once again in the kata now, the application. 1, 2, 3. And in the kata, the movement of feet. 1, 2, 3. The seventh section now is simply the application in the sword set of the transference of the sword from the right hand to the left. Notice in your cutting movements in here, and that's why it's called a sword hand and things like this. The basic movement, same as if we use the hand, an extended outward block and a chop, an inward block and a chop. The same thing is now done with the sword. With the sword in the left hand, the cutting motion from here, the first counter is simply made with a block from here, the cut is then made back. Okay. The second application from here, from this position now, the cut comes from the other side. So notice, the block is made and the cut is made back. Your next movement from here is simply a clearing motion. From here as you come in, you can begin any type of a weapon type of movement from here. I simply have Greg in position from here with the sword in position as it's coming down. Notice from here as I cross in, a block and cutting movement from here. So what we've had now, I'll have it taken without an opponent, but simply the opponent standing in position from here, a block and a cut, a block and a cut. Notice the clearing movement, the cut, and in. Your next movement from here now is simply the closing of the set from here, and these are simply your passes first to the right side of the body and the left side of the body in a closing movement, and finally the sword back into position. So your movement from here, the block and a cut, a block and a cut, cross, step in. The left foot now draws into position from here as we start our classic cutting moves. It can pass either to the right or the left side of the body. And demonstration from here, I'll take this across the body. Coming back to position. 1, 2, 3. Notice at this point from here, the right hand once again gains control of the sword, and the sword is simply brought back to position. Once again, that entire section taken by itself. The block and the cut, the block and the cut. The clearing movement in the cut. The left foot drawing back into position from here. 1, 2, 3. Complete the movement. The sword now, once again, returns to its position. The breakdown of the Japanese sword, quite simple in its basic movements from here. We'll use this as a comparison. As we get into the more circular movements, the continuous movements that we get into the Chinese systems, particularly the aerial movements, the rolling, and the continuous movement, whereas in the Japanese, you'll notice there are so many points where you actually come to a closed position from here and then continue the attack. This ends then the breakdown, the demonstration of the application of the Japanese sword set.